A Great Argead Saga ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance. Makāula Nakae. A new episode every single day. Episode 25. Summons of Thessaly and Macedon. Vanguard Pavilion of the Theban army, Thessaly, morning after the funeral, the interior of the Theban camp, was steeped in the fragrance of damp red clay and the smoke of oak firewood. Within the heavy, oppressive stillness that governed the pre-dawn of late May, a thick, stagnant humidity lingered implacably, like a warm, sentient observer. Inside the dim pavilion, beside the wavering light cast by a solitary oil lamp, stood General Pelopidas, Beodarch of the Boeotian League, and the very heart of the wildfire that radiated from the sacred band, Leuctra. His face was nothing less than a map upon which the blood-drenched history of Thebes was carved. The scars of the agonizing death struggle to liberate his native Cadmea from ruthless Spartan dominion, alongside the bruises of that fierce victory at Leuctra, were etched into his countenance as profound and proud brandings. While his ally Epaminondas invaded the southern Peloponnese, gouging out the heart of Sparta, liberating the enslaved Messenians to construct an independent state, and permanently stripping Sparta of its foundation for survival, Pelopidas, the other Titan, had advanced northward at the head of his forces. Having swiftly suppressed the turmoil of the Thessalian region and completely absorbed its influence, the iron hoplites of Thebes had finally reached the border of that uncultivated northern colossus, the kingdom of Macedon. This was the exact cadence of the arrival of the blazing sun, the moment dreaded by the usurper Ptolemy, and toward which the Queen Mother Eurydice cast her gaze, thirsting for a covenant of blood. Pelopidas was the very heart of passion itself, forming a flawless counterweight to the cold intellect of his ally Epaminondas. Together, they had once smashed the physical myth of Spartan invincibility into fragments and dust, elevating Thebes to the apex of Greek hegemony. Yet, in the stifling Thessalian night, the weight called hegemony pressed down upon his shoulders with singular heaviness. Why was he now advancing his troops into this sweltering north? It was no mere territorial expansion. Now that they had driven southern Sparta to the precipice of ruin, if Thebes were to reign as the immovable master hegemon of all Greece, it was absolutely necessary to place the north at their back, namely, the fertile cavalry breeding grounds of Thessaly and the inexhaustible resource zone of Macedonia completely under control, which is to say, inside the cage of their own intellect. True, hegemony could never be consummated without pacifying the north. This was the cold geostrategic ambition that drove Pelopidas forward. The faint rustle of the pavilion's tapestry echoed through the space, and Charon, a veteran Boeotian general, entered. Illumined by the lamplight, his expression was exceedingly austere. General Pelopidas. Regarding the sudden crisis in Macedon, a high-priority missive has arrived from Lord Epaminondas in Thebes, routed through Athens. Pelopidas broke the wax seal in silence. Pressed into it was the coat of arms of Macedon, a lion in agony. He swept his eyes swiftly over the fluid script, furrowing his thick brows fiercely. From Macedon, you say? Who, precisely, is the author of this document? Both factions, General, Charon replied. Beneath the calm tone characteristic of a warrior in his 40s, there seeped a deep suspicion toward the fathomless intrigues of the northern court. We have an envoy from Ptolemy of Elorus who continues to sign with the title of regent and completely separate from him. A courier of distress from the faction of Queen Mother Eurydice, who secretly implores our army's intervention from within the palace. Both sides are performing a hideous private feud, begging for the sword of Thebes. The corner of Pelopidas's lips twisted into a thin distortion. With the ashes of the king's funeral pyre scarcely cold, the raw shock of regicide still hung thick in the air. Less than a month had passed since King Alexander II had been stabbed from behind and slaughtered. A serpent by the name of Ptolemy had already seized the reins, crawling about as nominal regent for the young princes Perdiccas III and Philip. Pelopidas vividly recalled the memory of his own intervention in Macedonia a year ago. Ptolemy, Pelopidas scoffed, letting loose a cold, dry, and bitter friction of a laugh. Still clinging to power like a barnacle to a reef. He begs us for arbitration. In other words, by displaying the overwhelming martial might of my sacred band, he wishes to invest his blood-stained usurpation with a false legitimacy sanctioned by Thebes. A despicable man. And yet, General, the state of anarchy in that land threatens to needlessly drain our military strength, Charon added, offering his geostrategic concern. His tone carried a strong wariness and distrust, as if fearing that by meddling in an uncultivated land, Thebes might find itself ensnared in a quagmire of conflict. A vulnerable Macedonia invites Illyrian incursions, leaving a vacuum that threatens our rear. Conversely, a consolidated and powerful Macedonia under a flawed ruler, like Ptolemy, could easily become a grave thorn in the flank of Boeotia in the future. Pelopidas rose to his feet, pacing restlessly within the narrow confines of the pavilion. The map of Thessaly was already completely cleansed from his mind. His spirit was scanning the jagged, austere mountains of the Argead kingdom. Within Epaminondas's missive, an astonishing stratagem had been inscribed. Queen Mother Eurydice had approached the Athenian general Iphicrates, who had immediately forwarded the reality to Thebes. Iphicrates' counsel was exceedingly precise. The sole path to rescue the youngest prince, Philip, and simultaneously chain Macedonia within the Theban cage of order, is none other than to immure that 14-year-old boy within the Cadmea as the highest hostage of royal blood. Epaminondas, you two visualized the exact same blueprints so beautifully. Pelopidas concurred deeply within his breast. They summon us because they stand in the very midst of a desperate broken ruin. Within Pelopidas's eyes, the lethal, hazardous sparks peculiar to a man who leads a hegemonic state flickered. Therein dwelt an absolute expectation to ruthlessly exploit the tragedy of another nation. They have confirmed with their own blood that Thebes is the absolute judge and master hegemon of all Greece. This is nothing less than the perfect opportunity to definitively engineer the future structure of that kingdom in a manner that serves our Boeotian state interests. We shall feign recognition of Ptolemy's usurpation, while in truth we hold the windpipe of the Argead royal house entirely within our palm. He tucked the parchment into his belt. Marshal the departure of the squadron. We ride for Macedonia at dawn. Charon, those people seek a physician to pacify their acute crisis. When our army descends upon that land as a surgeon, I expect them to correctly comprehend the meaning of that absolute and severe price. As the sound of Charon's military boots receded into the distance, Pelopidas reached for a fresh scroll of parchment. Thebes did not wield its martial might out of mere charitable sentiment. Every military intervention demanded a colossal return to balance the ledger. What currency could Macedonia present? It was none other than the inexhaustible timber required to construct the warships of our sacred band to counter Athens, and the pure white silver to fill the treasuries of Thebes. They would thoroughly drain the flesh called raw materials from Macedonia. Yet, the true objective that captivated him most lay far beyond economic profit, the presence of a single hostage. To completely guarantee Macedonian loyalty for generations to come, Thebes would plunder the very future of that kingdom. He could vividly visualize the young Prince Philip being marched into the fortress of the Cadmea. In that land, beneath the massive shadow cast by the sacred band and under the severe philosophy and tutelage of Epaminondas himself, the boy would be flawlessly transfigured. He would witness the absolute discipline, radiated by 300 male lovers, and absorb the supreme aesthetic of the oblique phalanx into his very blood and bone. That 14-year-old boy, what sort of eyes does he possess? Is he of a caliber to become a docile decorative bird inside my cage, or? Pelopidas dipped his quill deep into the black ink. The colossal geostrategic gamble, named Macedonia, was at this very cadence unfolding. He was about to invite a young lion cub into the eagle's nest, entirely unaware of the fact that he was constructing with his own hands that immortal monster. Philip, too, who would one day break the entire world Pelopidas had built, and the very hegemony of Thebes itself, into fragments and dust. To be continued. A Great Argead Saga ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, the War Dance. A new episode every single day. We are dropping a new episode every day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 5 to 15-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, perfect for your daily plunge into antiquity. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below.